Hello, so this is an adapted presentation I did about leadership and fellowship in the outdoors and our sort of journey and interest in it at a BSA conference back earlier in the year. So I think to start off with, it's really important just from our outdoor trips provider to sort of appreciate the context of the school trip. If the big circles here represent the black circle represents a kid's school life, and all these white dots of significant events in it. A school trip is a comparatively small thing, and a sort of our challenge as a sort of school trip provider and the outdoor adventure industry is to try and have a as bigger impact, I guess, as possible, but also appreciate the wider context of where we play. So I think a sort of challenge or thing that's sort of constantly in our head is at one end of the spectrum we've got an activity adventure holiday where you just go and do your activities and forget about it. At the other end you've got a what I call a psychometric boot camp that's really sort of longer, probably more expensive, lots of analysis and in leadership theories that perhaps isn't quite as exciting as this end of the spectrum as an adventure holiday. And my view on it as a outdoor provider, we want to find that sort of sweet spot in the middle that's a sort of balance between a lot of fun activity kind of holiday, but also you're getting the value out of it as well in terms of character development. I think that brings us on to our problem or our challenge as a company would be as the outdoor event industry is fundamentally I think the schools use outdoors pursuits to develop what I like to call future-proof skills in young people. So often called core skills, leadership, resilience, teamwork. People debate to what proportion they do that and the best way to do it, etc. But that's a big part of it of what we do. And I was, looking very much down the traditional route of particularly leadership, and you think about how our trips can develop that those traits. And then I guess I came across an article in the Economist called Britain's Followership Problem, and that kind of talks quite a lot about how, well, essentially we had in government at the time we had lots of people that trying to lead and be leaders, and actually what the problem was is that people weren't good enough followers. Everyone was trying to lead the whole time, and followership skills was underrepresented, which got me thinking really about how the outdoors and the trips that we do, and generally actually how much time are we spending leading or following. I was thinking about the activities that we do, mountain biking in groups. Actually, the most chance you've got of hurting yourself mountain biking is other people in the group. So it's not just the leader that's important. It's all about how working as a group, and same with hiking and particularly whitewater rafting. So white rafting, for example, is a good example of being good followers rather than a leader, because fundamentally, the young people aren't the leader, and then after raft guide is the leader, and the same with the other activities as well. I think I just thought it was really good way of looking at how to teach leadership and to young people. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about how much time, if you consider yourself a leader or not, how much time do you spend leading, how much time do you spend following, and what the difference between the two is. So yeah, we started looking at on trips, started looking at this balance between leadership and followership, and found it really, really, really useful. And there's sort of two or three key points that we found when trying to articulate this to young people is what's really important is knowing when to lead and when to follow. And the activities that we do and our adventure activities are really good at knowing that. For example, in the raft, are you going to be leading, showing leadership skills, or are you going to be showing really good followership skills? And also understanding that all leaders need followers. So without any followers, then what is the leader what is a leader doing, and obviously then the attributes lead on to that of what makes a good follower, and we sort of came up with these 3 or 4 key points. And the first one is ask good questions. I think any teacher or outdoor sort of instructor provider will sort of that might ring very true with you. Is I think it's a topic that's underrepresented, is how to ask good questions. You always get the kid that perhaps asks the question that's already been answered, or forget to ask important questions. I think it's quite a big topic that's often glossed over, is how to ask good questions at the right time. Obviously, good followers follow instructions well, but also appreciate the group's aims, and really importantly, which is probably not the first thing you might not think of it when you're thinking about a followership skill, but really important is thinking critically. And there's a good diagram from the Harvard Business Review here of looking at followership and how active or passive they are, and their ability to think critically. And obviously we want to be up here in the top right. If you're active and you can think critically, then you're a really effective follower. If you're passive and think critically, then you're an alienated follower, and potentially that's the role of a leader, to activate that follower. And then you've got down here, you can sort of work out what they are. If you're uncritical and passive, you're a sheep, and if you're not thinking critically but active, then you're one of those yes people. So the challenge we've got, and I'm very conscious when looking at this stuff, are we just playing with words here, looking at sort of semantics, or how much substance is there in this whole followership word? And I kind of is it just teamwork rebranded? Are we just playing with words? But I think maybe yes, but at the end of the day, if that helps schools and young people identify with the skills and the things they need to learn, then that's great. I mean, essentially, it's about branding and storytelling and the timing and consistency of your message as a school or as a outdoor education provider. If followership and leadership can be used effectively to articulate what you mean to young people, then it's absolutely great. And we're certainly finding that it's pretty effective. I think it is again important to put it in perspective for a school trip. It's we're only 1 week out of a whole sort of academic year, and as this sort of mentioned already, the language with which you use and the frequency with which you use it. So I think schools need to understand that going on an outdoor pursuits trip for a week where they might learn about followership skills is good, but if that can be baked into the year, and they can use it in other aspects of school life or extracurricular school life, then it's really important. So if followership is just the language that a school or a young person identify with, then great, but it needs to be continued throughout the year. And the context, I think, is really important. So obviously we bang the outdoor pursuits drum, but important to what's the difference between an outdoor pursuits trip and a drama production. So I think the two are very could be described very, very similarly, and can bring about different benefits. And potentially outdoor leadership and followership skills could be articulated in a drama production, and kids can understand different contexts with what these skills are for, then they'll get much more out of it. And then just sort of go back to the sort of first thing, if we can start linking these things together, drama productions and school trip, and making connections between these dots, then it's going to be much more. It's not going to be just a week that they sort of come on and sort of obviously enjoy, but then sort of forget about. But they can keep linking things back, and then we're on to a winner. So a bit of time to think. These are during the presentation I gave the room some time to think about these various things. How can we link it up with across the curricula, and how to sell followership to parents. And I think one of the interesting challenges of this is followership isn't as immediately attractive to sell as a thing. Hello, I'm a great follower. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it as leadership, so that's quite an interesting challenge. And what can staff learn? And one of the I think is one of the deputy headmasters at this conference said that this sort of concept could be really good to help teach young people at assessment days when they go to these assessment days at the senior schools. The people running assessment days at the school aren't necessarily looking for the person that typically would lead a situation and take control of everyone else on the task in hand, but actually they are looking for people with followership skills. So if there was an identifiable attribute that schools brought, the schools worked on throughout their school, then it could be set them up really well for these assessment days. Then a few questions I put these in the sort of blog, but a good way. This is essentially how we and I like to try and articulate this concept to young people, thinking of great leaders. Do they lead all the time? Who are they leading? When is it a good time to lead and follow? Will you be a leader when you get to your first job? Understanding that as they go out into their careers, they're not good. They're going to have to be, if they can be really effective followers, and they can become leaders as and when they need to. So I think it's a really sort of important concept to sort of go into the workplace for, go into the workplace with. So yeah, that's it.